Stay free. See it first on Rumble.
Is it true that in every single conceivable measurable metric, if you have like saunas, it's good for you? Like heart disease, it's good for respiratory conditions, it's good for cancer. Is that true, or is that fake news?
It's almost true, with the exception of cancer. That hasn't been shown yet. But as you mentioned, thermal stress, the sauna is a type of thermal stress. You're elevating your core body temperature, much like exercise. When you exercise, you elevate your core body temperature. You sweat to try to cool yourself down. Well, saunas, they're a type of stress. They're called intermittent stress. And this is the same type of stress that exercise is. It's a good type of stress where you're stressing your body, but your body has evolved these stress responses that are beneficial to that stress. I mean, humans were, throughout evolution, we were exposed to intermittent stress. We were, hunting, gathering, we were running fast to get prey, that we went through periods of food scarcity, right? Like these are types of intermittent stress, and our bodies have evolved pathways, genes that are turned on that sort of respond to that are not only beneficial in that moment, but they have a net beneficial effect, anti-inflammatory responses, antioxidant responses that are active much longer than the intermittent type of, stress period that we sort of engaged in. And so, yes, sauna use has been, it's a modality, another modality, I argue, another modality of basically healthful types of behaviors like exercise, like meditation, like good sleep, all these things, that good diet. These are lifestyle factors that are known to improve health. And I think sauna should be one of those factors, because there is just mounting evidence that the sauna is associated with a 50% lower cardiovascular related mortality. It's associated with a 40% lower what's called all-cause mortality, basically dying from all non-accidental causes. As you mentioned, respiratory disease as well. It affects the lungs. Alzheimer's disease, a 66% lower chance of getting Alzheimer's disease. So many different benefits that have been sort of over the years now, we're getting more evidence that the sauna is beneficial.
It's extraordinary, it seems to me, Doctor, that by replicating the conditions by which we long lived deep in our forgotten history, we can engage dormant forces, and that one of the hallmarks of our time appears to be this disembodying way of life, that we increasingly stare sedentary at screens, glazed and lost and not connected to our bodies, unable to have healthy sex, eat healthy food, move nimbly through trees. It's like we've forgotten who we are. Do you believe that that's part of what it is, that it replicates the conditions for which we are evolved? And indeed, is that why it even, like exercise, sauna, and can I ask, cold therapy, is that why they affect your mental health positively too?
I do think so. I think that because we have been able to measure genetic pathways, molecular pathways, molecules that are increasing in our body in response to sauna use, in response to exercise, in response to cold exposure, we're able to measure those molecules and genes and go, look, these are beneficial molecules. They're anti-inflammatory molecules. They're things that are blunting chronic inflammation, which is a byproduct of being sedentary, of being overweight, obese, of eating a refined, carbohydrate, processed food rich diet. And we're able to then also look at these genes. These are genes that are, heat shock proteins, for one. They respond to heat, but they also respond to just stress in general. So you can actually activate heat shock proteins, obviously from sauna, which would increase, your core body temperature and exercise, but cold exposure also increases those. And they're basically, they have a beneficial effect in your brain, also in muscle mass. They're preserving muscle mass, preventing atrophy. And so, yes, I do think that actually the intermittent type of stress, you have to kind of be uncomfortable for a little bit. And that uncomfortable feeling is essential for the response, which is beneficial. And this term is somewhat sometimes it's referred to as what's called hormesis. So essentially, you expose your body to a little bit of stress, and sometimes that stress could be in the form of physical activity or temperature stress, or it can be plant polyphenols. You can, turmeric for one. These are bioactive compounds that are found in plants that they're a little bit toxic, but only when they're like in a really, 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 really high dose. So, like for example, they're toxic to insects or fungus, and that's kind of why plants evolved these compounds, is to sort of ward them off. But when humans ingest them, it has a similar response. It activates these beneficial anti-inflammatory, antioxidant pathways and in our brain and in our body that are improving the way we age and improving the way we feel, the way we think. And it's interesting because I actually became so interested in the sauna when I was a graduate student getting my PhD. I was in the lab. Failed experiment after failed experiment. I mean, let me tell you, there's like 10 more failed experiments than successful ones as a scientist. I was very stressed out. I mean, it was very overwhelming. And I started using the sauna every morning before I went into the lab to do my experiments. And it was like night and day difference. I knew something was happening in my brain. I was able to handle stress better. I was able to handle the anxiety of, graduate school better. And so I started looking into this research and like, there's something going on in the brain. Like people usually think about sauna, they think about sweating out toxins, which is true. But I was very interested in the profound effects that it was having on my mental health. And that was sort of the start of my interest in saunas. This was back in like 2010. And since then, there has been quite a bit of literature showing that sauna is beneficial on the brain. So work by Dr. Charles Raison, this was back in about 2016, he published a paper with people that have major depressive disorder. And they were sort of resistant to typical treatment. So like SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors is a very common one. And so he took these individuals and separated them into two groups. So one group got what's called whole body hyperthermia, which is kind of like a sauna. So there's a machine. It's an infrared type of sauna where you basically, are warming the person up via infrared radiation. And so they were getting that active treatment. And then there was a placebo group that was getting just a little bit warmer, like enough to think they were getting the treatment, but it wasn't. And the people that were getting the actual treatment, they actually were in a feverish state. So their core body temperature, they were at about 101.3 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little bit feverish. So they were really getting hot. And after just one treatment, they had an antidepressant effect that was not found in the placebo group that lasted 6 weeks. And this was sort of the instigation of now what is a field of research that I'm involved in. Dr. Ashley Mason at UCSF is now she's taken that study and she said, okay, well, that was one session. What if we take depressed people and give them like 4 or 8 sessions? What kind of effect will that have? And so the data is very promising. It's not published yet. I can't talk too many details about it, but it's extremely promising. And it's so exciting because what we have here is a potential modality for, mood disorders, anxiety. Much more work needs to be done. But the reality is that, sauna does mimic in many ways moderate cardiovascular intensity. A lot of the physiological response is similar. And it takes a certain amount of commitment to go for a run, to get on a bike, get on your Peloton, whatever it is that's going to get your heart rate, up and you're sweating, and a lot of times people that are depressed, it is challenging for them to try to take that initial step. But when you tell them to get into a sauna, it kind of feels like, well, I just have to step into this. Yes, it's uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable when you get hot, and you do have to sort of bear through that uncomfort. But it's easier to step into a sauna than to start going for a jog, especially if you've never done that. You've been sedentary. And so not to mention people that are disabled. There are a variety of people that can't go for a run. They can't get on a bike and cycle. And so this is a potential new way to not only improve mood and basically mental health, but the side effects are reduced cardiovascular disease. They're reduced respiratory disease, reduced Alzheimer's disease risk. I mean, it's beneficial side effects. So I'm so excited about this area of research. And we have known for a while that exercise is also a potential treatment. Not just, I don't want to say potential. I mean, it really is. It could be a treatment for depression. Study after study has come out. In fact, a new one just came out comparing head-to-head comparison, people getting antidepressants versus people getting running therapy. And the running therapy is basically working just as good as the antidepressants.